Hello, welcome back to continuing Pro-Life Virtual Mission Week. Sending love to all of the people who are following us. Earlier today, I talked about tiny humans and how awesome they are in their development. And if you missed that, that's okay. You can find it in our Pro-Life Virtual Mission Week playlist here on the Facebook page. As the topic says, I'm going to be talking about hashtag abortion is violence, thoughts from a feminist. So as a resident feminist in Louisiana Right to Life, feminism is not a part of Louisiana Right to Life, but that's something that I like to bring to the table as a presenter. I think it's important that feminism is a part of this discussion in a sense for some people because we are constantly talking about equal rights in our society. And society says that abortion is what helps to make women equal to men. Right? It's what helps them to succeed. It's what helps them to have control over their own bodies. The core tenets of feminism are equality, non-discrimination, and non-violence. Those three tenets more specifically, number one, all human beings have equal worth and deserve human rights. Number two, no action or characteristic can nullify the intrinsic worth of any human being. And number three, all aggressive violence is contrary to equality. So let's look at this from that equality and non-discrimination perspective. Our society is so confused about the unborn because they're inside of a woman's body, right? And on Wednesday, Ben Clapper might be talking about some ways to to have that conversation. But I want to talk with you about exactly distinguishing between what they're saying with equality and discrimination, right? When we talk about discrimination, there's four things that essentially the conversation falls under when you draw the line in the sand between one person who has rights that you can't touch and another person who is seen as less than a human being. These four things can be remembered by SLED, which may be mentioned again later in our videos. SLED stands for size and appearance, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. Size and appearance, we see the difference all the time with racial discrimination, the difference between men and women and how we look and our capabilities. So you can look at the Holocaust, right, and the way that they determine people based on racially or developmentally. They even had tools to measure the size of people's heads. Right? Hair swatches to see the hair color. You can go to the Holocaust Museum and see those different differences, right?
Level of development, we can see that when people have developed differently, either physically or because of mental development disabilities.
Environment, we see discrimination against people depending on where they come from or where they are. What about the homeless? And degree of dependency, we see discrimination when one human being is seen as needing to be more dependent on another. These four things are often common justifications for people to use as differences between the unborn and the born as well. So you can see parallels between multiple injustices and discrimination and inequality throughout society's history. We see between the unborn a clear size and appearance difference, right? The unborn is so small, especially in my Tiny Humans video. If you saw those pictures of when they're just a few hours after being born, whenever it's multiple cells that are forming rapidly by the minute, obviously they look different than another human being at a later point in life. Level of development, same thing here. People will say their brain isn't developed well until a certain point, have fully functioning capabilities. Environment, unborn is inside the womb, the born is outside the womb. Degree of dependency, the unborn has that obvious nutrient connection to the mother, whereas the born, not quite as much. I'd rather talk about the abortion issue in relation to lack of resources, if that woman is alone, is abused, is being pressured into this, and especially the abortion industry is taking advantage of women throughout society. There's a lot of nasty stuff to get through and dig through in a conversation. But it makes me really sad as a feminist to have those biological different, philosophically different discussions with people between the unborn and the born. Because what people need to realize is that the same language that they're using, whenever they're saying women shouldn't be discriminated against, immigrants shouldn't be discriminated against, different racial ethnicities shouldn't be discriminated against, the same language that people are using to make sure that we're having valid conversations about any of those things, no matter what political ideology you come from, suddenly it's turned around and it's used against the unborn. Suddenly, whenever you're saying someone's appearance doesn't matter whether or not they're human, you're using that against the unborn. Somebody with disabilities needs to be fought for, right? Their rights in the workplace, their general rights and abilities throughout society, making sure that, people have sign language interpreters, that people are writing text on videos and pictures that they post on Facebook. That is all awesome. And especially as a feminist, I thoroughly advocate for those things. And I will stand alongside you. And I will advocate for each of these things, right? There's no reason why I am turning myself off to that just to fight for the unborn. What I'm saying is these two are on equal planes. That just because this person is so dependent, just because they're in a different place, just because they're still developing their arms and their legs and their eyes and their personality, just because all of that is still going on, which continues after birth, until your brain isn't even developed fully until you're early into mid-20s, right? This is just a natural progression of humanity. But whenever using that language against the unborn just because of those reasons, to me it's so sad as a feminist and as a society that's truly fighting for equality. We're better than that. We should be moving on from whether or not the unborn is a human being or a human person. Instead, we should be moving into this situation that our society is in now, with this violence going on, both of the unborn and the women being pressured to partake in this violence of killing the unborn. So please understand with me and understand throughout this whole virtual mission week that all life is equally valuable regardless of any stage that you're in. As I say in the text of this premiere, and as I'm going to give you a moment now, I'm going to talk about the violence of abortion, because one of those tenets of feminism is nonviolence. For any form of discrimination and inequality, we are here to seek peaceful solutions that give a chance for all, right? But abortion is not a peaceful solution to a grave societal problem. Abortion is violence that continues to perpetuate violence happening in the home. So a warning, I am not going to show graphic images. I am going to show you textbook illustrations, medical textbook illustrations that are essentially what an abortionist would use to learn how to perform an abortion. So they are violent images in their own way. So if you have children in the house that you don't want to see these photos, or if you want to wait until after this premiere is over to be able to go review them before you show them to your children, that's fine. Please take this moment to make your decision. So even among pro-lifers, sometimes we have to discuss exactly what abortion is so that people realize once again, oh yeah, I have to fight against this. And even pro-life people don't quite know what exactly goes on in the abortion clinics. They know that a life is being killed, and that's something that's motivating, right? But let's take a moment to understand exactly what are the procedures being done when a woman actually walks into the clinic. The first abortion procedure that I'm going to talk about is RU486. This is a chemical type of abortion in the form of 3 pills. The first pill is taken whenever they're inside the clinic, whenever they've seen how far along that woman is. This is taken up until 9 weeks. She takes the pill. She's often told, okay, take it, go home. There's just 2 other pills to take 24 to 48 hours later. It'll feel just like a period. That first pill cut off the nutrient system essentially between the mother and the child. Those 2 pills later induce early labor. which she is doing now over the toilet of her own home. Many women testify that it does not feel just like a period. It feels horrible. There's a lot of cramping, a lot of bleeding, a lot of trauma that follows it. And sometimes that bleeding will last up to several weeks and not just like a normal period. Second type of abortion is suction aspiration between 7 and 15 weeks. It is exactly what it sounds like. This is a tool called a cannula. Cannula is inserted into the womb, vacuum turned on, and immediately crushes that child. At that point, if you remember from tiny humans, those bones probably are not yet calcified or just starting to harden, so that tissue is just soft enough to be sucked through. This is a tool called forceps. Forceps are entered into the womb, grab onto a limb, twist and pull. So this is a dismemberment abortion. And what's even more upsetting at this point is that it's not just the killing of a life, it's the torturing of a life as well, because the unborn can likely feel pain at this point. I'm going to show you an image at this time. Something to think about while you watch this image. I read an article of an abortionist who describes performing these abortions, and she says that toward the end she goes in and rips out the larynx of the child, so that, especially in the case of a botched abortion or as she's removing, you don't get the chance to hear the baby scream. Something I'm also going to talk about, because it is a big topic, or it has been a big topic in the past year, is very late-term abortions. People say that those don't happen, but there are a few abortionists in the country who do perform them. And states, especially like New York, last year certainly legalized or confirmed their legalization of abortion up until the day before birth. Essentially at that time, poison is injected into the heart or the head of the unborn child, and they give 24 hours for that child to suffer and die within the womb. That woman goes back. If they check and that child still hasn't died, they try again. And they do this until that baby has died, and then they deliver the baby. It's a terrible, horrible procedure, and you can imagine the suffering that that unborn child goes through. These things do happen. In Louisiana, we got to understand the kind of violence and how much violence there is happening with abortion in our own state. There are 3 abortion clinics in Louisiana, in Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. There's about 8,000 to 9,000 abortions that happen per year in Louisiana alone. And I'm going to throw up these numbers of how many abortions happen in your parish of residence. That's within 1 year. As some of my favorite pro-life modern feminists say, abortion is oppression redistributed. Yes, women are still being oppressed in a lot of ways. There's still domestic violence going on, and even in this whole abortion culture, women are being pressured to abortions by their parents, by their boyfriend, even by their husband. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of scenarios in which a woman might feel that she needs an abortion in order to survive, in order to make it, in order to finish school, so many things. This is also not my own quote, but it's incredible. Women's liberation cannot be bought by the blood of our children. If we're going to be fighting for equality for men and women, we should be paying attention to the men and women who are also in the womb. We shouldn't be pitting child against mother and mother against child. We should be fighting in our societies to have resources that both will not only survive, but thrive. Throughout this week, we have multiple people talking to you about digging into that kind of conversation, about making sure that people are understanding that the unborn is equal to the human that is outside the womb. Kathy Allen tomorrow morning will be talking about her own abortion experience and post-abortive healing, and especially in the Black community, right? There's so much opportunity for wholesome conversation to to make sure that we are standing for both the woman and the child. Maddie Brinkerhoff says, when a woman steals to satisfy hunger, we may safely conclude that there is something wrong in society. So when a woman destroys the life of her unborn child, it is an evidence that either by education or circumstances, she has been greatly wronged. It's just so important that as feminists, we unite together to make sure that abortion is not only illegal but unthinkable, that it's actually not needed in society, and that women don't feel that that's something that they have to resort to. I mean, women experience PTSD after their abortions. 65% of women experience PTSD after their abortions. 64% are coerced abortions. So many women have physical complications afterward. Part of the pro-choice language is that, you may not feel ready to have a baby now, and that's okay. You can choose to have your family later. This is not giving that up, right? But this is obviously not the right time. But a lot of women, because they have physical complications, they can't even have a baby later. Right? And that's something that they weren't really told or made aware of, or that they think that is just pro-life rhetoric. And that's not going to happen to them. But the truth is that it happens to so many women. And honestly, one of the really tough conversations we have to have in society is how the abortion industry preys on women who have been human trafficked. Right? That's something we really need to stand up against as feminists because, one, a woman is absolutely being abused, or man, or whoever you are, right? There's multiple people being abused in this giant human trafficking industry all around the world. And you can imagine if someone's being human trafficked, how often they're being sent to a clinic to have a forced abortion just to be brought back into the system. And we know for a long time, because of Live Action's undercover videos, multiple resources, that abortion clinics were not and still aren't in a lot of cases reporting victims of human trafficking. These are the things that don't make sense to me as a modern feminist, that women need abortion to be empowered, that they accept the wombless male body as a normative in the workplace, that they accept the dehumanization of children through this acceptance of legal abortion, and any society that accepts legal violence is comfortable with legal lethal discrimination. So how can we answer this disparity in our feminism? One, we can keep talking about abortion, and we keep understanding that violence, and keep understanding how human the unborn is, which you'll see throughout this virtual mission week. We can work on education and resources together for women as they grow up, right? Their preteen, teen, college years. What exactly can they do to help understand their bodies, right? And how can they understand the resources that they're able to turn to if and when they are in the situation of a crisis pregnancy? We can eliminate the circumstance surrounding the issue that they're in, not blaming these women for walking into those doors. We don't know what they've gone through. We still have so much work to do to make abortion unthinkable in our society. How do we expect one woman to know that it should be unthinkable? We can fight for holistic health. We can understand again that the male's body is not the normative body, the only one that we should be following, and that's what abortion allows us to do, right? We should understand that both male and female, those two body types, the normative body types, that there's ways to take care of the men's body and there's ways to take care of the woman's body. We should understand that women should be treated in a way in the workplace that gives them that dignity, that gives them that ability to continue contributing, even though they go through different circumstances in their life, such as pregnancy, such as giving birth, right? We should have intersectional values even with pro-choice people. Now, don't get me wrong. We should continue having those hard, tough conversations about abortion, making sure that people know that we stand against it and that it is violence. But we can work together to start getting to that point, right? We can keep talking about adoption together. We can keep talking about human trafficking together. We can keep talking about things that, again, eliminates that circumstance and helps the woman in that situation, because pro-lifers, that woman is just as human as the unborn you're trying to protect. If you can help one, you can help the other. I love being a pro-life feminist. I love kind of being a sort of unicorn in the pro-life, pro-choice realm. Another one of my favorite quotes from Destiny at New Wave Feminist, I'll put this up as a wrapping up with a nice bow my talk to you today. We are often told we can't call ourselves feminists because we don't believe in bodily autonomy, when in reality the exact opposite is true. If anything, we believe in bodily autonomy far more than the average feminist, since we support one's right over their bodies from the moment it first exists. I want my rights to be respected, and I want my human dignity to be valued from the very moment I exist. I want my daughter to be respected and valued from the moment she exists. I want all women to be respected and valued from the moment they exist. I want all humanity to understand that we're amazing, that our human value is completely intrinsic, meaning it comes from itself from the moment that we exist. And if we can understand that for the unborn, for the poor, for the human, and no matter what social circumstance that we're discussing policy about, if we can understand that they have intrinsic human value, that they shouldn't be discriminated against, that we shouldn't answer things with violence, we can actually start answering all of our social problems, right? Not just putting a band-aid on these problems, but getting to the core and healing those wounds. Thank you so much for joining me. Please check in tomorrow, Tuesday at 10 a.m. to hear Kathy and her journey with abortion in the Black community, and then again at 7 to hear Jonathan and his take on the similar topic. All throughout the week, we're going to have awesome videos for you, and then if you've missed this premiere, you can check these videos out on our Facebook playlist, Pro-Life Virtual Mission Week, and on YouTube for that same playlist. Have a great night, everybody.